Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. I want to apologize for the clickbaity thumbnail and title. You know how it goes, YouTube algorithms and people's emotions, whatnot. I'm sure some of you are feeling emotional today as the price swings on Bitcoin down currently at $29,450, and the majority of the alt sector is just getting annihilated. So we're going to go over a few of my thoughts today. We're going to look at some deeper on-chain data. I also just going to rant. We'll probably take some time to, at the end of this video, to go over any of your guys' thoughts and questions because this is a live stream today. So we're going to start there and we're going to dive right into the charts. And we are going to actually start with Bitcoin, maybe on a smaller time frame here. Yeah, let's start, well, the daily. By the smaller time frame, I mean the daily. So here we go. Boom, there's Bitcoin on the daily right now. I've got a few indicators, and you know, guys, we've talked about this before. Generally, I like to remove all of the indicators as I feel that they often cause a lot of noise and can be quite distractive. So here we go. This is actually the perpetual futures. So I wanted to point something out for those of you that are new to studying Wyckoff. It's actually the supply coming in at both of these points right now that are interesting to me. So generally the selling climax and the spring have a fairly equal supply line. Now the downside is on some of the exchanges that are not using, so we're just looking at perpetual futures. Here, this is Bitstamp on a spot, and the supply signature is nowhere near as high. So we're getting a little bit of conflicting data from the volume signatures on the perpetuals versus the spot. Now, this tells us probably two key things. Number one being the futures markets or the perpetual swaps, etc., are actually a fairly large majority of the amount of trading that's taking place right now. And that is probably where a lot of the volatility comes from. I mean, you've had 30+% swings up and down, which is a powerful potential for any that like to swing trade. I'm not a swing trader. I like to follow the whole market cycle, and that's what a lot of people are probably interested in today, is understanding what the bull market is over and when it starts. Basically, those are the two key factors. Now, in the rest of the altcoin cycle sector, take a look at Solana here. Now, I should have brought this up earlier. Let me go and actually do that now. So for those of you that are new to Wyckoff, one of the things that we love studying is the Livermore accumulation pattern. So this is, here it is. So this is drawn in, I don't know, like in the 1930s or something like this. Open image and new tab, there we go. So here's the Wyckoff, or sorry, the Livermore speculative accumulation chart. And generally in this speculative accumulation chart, we come back down to the widening megaphone or the widening mouth of the cylinder here. And what I want to do right now is just take a comparative look at our Solana plays. So for those of you that have been in the bear den for quite some time, you will recognize that back here in February, we were looking at this speculative Livermore chart based off of the Solana perpetuals. And this to me looks like the perfect kind of finality of the market. So again, when you're trying to understand market cycles, it's best to think in the macro, right? So we've been here for years. We've gone up through cycles up and down multiple times now. And anyone who's shilling FUD or even hopium, I don't think really understands the nature of this beast, right? So getting into Solana here in December, you're up 1,230%, and at a high, you're up 3,000%, which is an extraordinary gain. So it's not FUD to think that we're going to come down lower. It's actually just called sensibility at this point. Now, we had this huge relief rally in Solana, which looked good. And the other day we went over, okay, well, if we don't see the price move back above the POC, we're going to come down lower. And we very, very quickly turned around. So this to me indicates, and it's actually across the board, even with FTT, we're seeing a redistribution pattern. 1 inch is now turned into a redistribution pattern. Same with Serum here as well. Now, there's not a whole lot of room for things like Serum or 1 inch to go down. They're at $2. How low could they go? Well, they can go all the way back down to like $1. So that's another 50% drop that we could see in a lot of the alternative sector. Even Wu Trade couldn't get back above its trend line and has shaved off another 50% since then. After a big relief rally, almost 180% relief rally in Wu Trade, 259%. So when we look at Bitcoin, let's go back to this chart here. Again, we're on the daily. We're looking at two key factors. Number one, the rest of the market cycle looks pretty destructive. But when we look at Solana and we understand that, okay, well, if the speculative Livermore chart is correct here, and we've seen these play out before, that we come back down to around 0.7, which is around $11 or $12, which is still a significant drop for Solana. That's another 50% from where we are today. So we made our first entries in Solana around 13 bucks, and we're coming back right down to that. So we're always learning. I think one of the most important parts is to understand that, well, A, we're always learning. I will never consider myself an expert. I think once I do that, you've gone down the path of thinking that you've figured it out. And markets will always go against that to teach you that, well, you can be wrong. So more importantly, what I like to do is consistently go, hey, I'm a student of today. What can I learn? And again, with Solana, we went over this about a week ago, that once we couldn't get back above the POC here, this was likely we were going to come down even further. And we've had a huge drop. I mean, considering Solana was up 100% and now has retraced all of that in a matter of days, with very limited supply coming into the market, doesn't look good, right? So we can imagine two things. The whole market is entering not a bear market status. Like, we don't know if we're entering a bear market status. That's a much larger story. But we're at least entering a phase of reaccumulation. So this Livermore chart, it comes back down. So it goes market cycle up, market cycle down, reaccumulation, and then moves upwards further. So we could be witnessing a reaccumulation phase that may take a few more months. We could go all the way through July, August, September in a reaccumulation. So when we go back to Bitcoin, one of the things we've been watching is the potential for this to be a reaccumulation chart, where this would be the spring today and we would move back up. Now, what we want to keep a really close eye on are the kind of the final levels here. So we've been following this trading range for almost a month now. What's interesting is you had a break above the falling wedge and now a break below. And we've seen that before, where it will break below and it'll break above, and the next areas are the most important. So for instance, if this purple and red line here at 36,000, if we do not recover above and move higher, we're going to continue down lower, and we could come down a lot, especially for the average new investor. So let's just take a moment to remember that I myself am not really that concerned about the smaller time frames. I've been here for a bunch of years, and it's this larger story that's the most interesting. Now, there's two key factors we can start to take a look at. Number one, that we've gone over this before. There's a fairly easy to see head and shoulders, which is a bearish signal, right? So we can assume to some degree that we're in a bearish movement. We are up significantly since our entries here at around 9 grand, still at around 300 to 400%. So we're not doing poorly. And we took a bunch out at around 56,000. You can go back and look at our videos on April 23rd, when we had our first kind of breakdown of this upthrust after distribution, which we had gone over. Now, everybody's going over Wyckoff now, which is great to see that it's popular. But I think one of the most important parts here is to understand the macro perspective. So for instance, I see someone that's pretty ridiculous that says crypto is dead, take your losses now. You'd never want to think like that. In fact, I'm actually just going to ban people that communicate like that. So first off, if you talk stupid things, you're just going to get hidden from the channel, because we don't need people that are uneducated giving you a voice on our platform. That's just not effective. So one of the things I want to go over right now that's really important to understand is the macro story that's taking place now. Let's go back, and again, we've done this over and over again. I think it's really important. I think it's really important to understand the macro cycles. Okay, so let's pretend that it's 2017. Okay, and you just bought your first Bitcoin or Bitcoins, hopefully, at a few $1,000, right? At $1,000. Now, it comes down to 430 bucks, and you're thinking, oh crap, I should sell here and try to rebuy back lower. Now, the problem is A, you probably never usually buy back. But the best mode is not actually to sell and to buy back. It's to go, well, shit, if we are entering a bear market, the best thing for me to do is just every month buy, and accumulate. That's what all the big players do, and that's how all the big players win the game. How you lose the game is by listening to people who talk in the chat, says, oh, just sell now, you wrecked, like bear market starting, get rid of. That's a horrible that's a horrible strategy, because it doesn't take into account the macro perspective of this game, which is that over the long term, the bull market actually continues, and you're seeing this beautiful, the potential beautiful opportunity to accumulate, right? So for a moment, you're like, oh, I bought here and we're down. Maybe I should sell and buy back here. It's like, yeah, you're not going to do that. In fact, you've made the mistake by even thinking you're going to do that. So what you do, and what you should always be focused on doing, is long-term accumulation strategies. Now, if you bought at the high, you kind of fucked up here. This is where we were partially selling. I probably could have sold everything, but hey, at least we're good for the next few years. So the point of it here is that a strategy of accumulation is actually one of the most effective, which is where you just find a particular part of the month, every month, and you buy. And you think to yourself, well, Tio, I'm a taxi driver, or I work at McDonald's. Like, how can I ever get rich with just putting like a small amount of money in every month? And the other day I shared something, was it on Twitter or Facebook? I think it was Twitter. Let's take a look here. So for those of you that are not, give us the thumbs up right now. I want to take a look at one of our posts on Twitter here. Let's see, it was a Netflix one. Let's see if I can find it. I apologize for this. I should have uploaded this earlier, but you kind of never really know what I'm going to talk about until all of a sudden we're talking about it, and then I get to find out. Oh, damn, it was on Facebook. That's too bad. Oh, here it is. So this is kind of a nice representative of an idea here, which is that here's one person who spent $12 a month on Netflix. What does she get? Thousands of hours of entertainment. But here's one person, Neely, who's spending $12 a month on buying Netflix stock instead. And over the course of basically 18 years, I guess, she has now $198,000. Now, Bitcoin and Netflix are drastically different, but more importantly, it's this consistency that I think really shows up throughout time. And a lot of people get this wrong. An investment strategy isn't buy here, sell here, buy here. It's actually buy all of this. Maybe take some risk off when you see these crazy highs come in, and then continue to buy. I mean, you continue to buy, you continue to buy, you continue to accumulate. There's these very short momentary cycles where Bitcoin's price jacks up, but that's kind of the illusion of the market cycle. The bears are the smartest ones because they know that the game of foraging and accumulating is the most important game to be playing. So the importance of accumulation is hyper important. So it's actually more important about your entry than it is your exit, right? So if you've made proper entries, you don't really care about exiting today at all either. You're like, well, great, we're still up 400%. Who cares, right? That's amazing strategy. So I think people often really get this wrong because first off, most of the people in the YouTube chat here are probably brand new. They're probably brand new to investing or to Bitcoin or to any type of investment strategy, and therefore they get hyper emotional. And that is the disease of the early stage investor. And one of the ways to cure that is by joining a mastermind group. So if you consider yourself to be adventurous and like to try new things, go to arcanebear.com/private, where our mastermind group is constantly going over these things. And again, understanding the long-term strategy of accountability, it's really how you win this game. We've had members who have made hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars just by showing up all the time. That strategy is hyper important. Now, again, it's this time frame thing that really throws people off. Here you go. Let's say November 2018 till November 2020. You have a 2-year period where 90% of you that are on this channel right now were not fucking here at all. You show up here in the midst of the bull market cycle, or even here at the top of the bull market cycle. But what you wanted to do was be all the way in back here. That way this doesn't bother you. Even if we come down to like $19,000, we're still in profit by like 200%. That's an important conjecture to understand, is because when you're building a portfolio, you're really trying to think about that macro perspective of, hey, had I just been buying when Bitcoin was $1,000, and had I just kept buying when Bitcoin was around $6,000, You know what people are going to do? Like Michael Saylor, they're just going to keep buying when Bitcoin's around $16,000. And that's how you win. Don't follow the, I mean, even me, I don't have $1 billion to be dropping into Bitcoin every few weeks like Michael Saylor, but look at the strategy that they're playing. It's the same strategy that we're communicating, which is long-term, frequent accumulation, shaving off risk when we are up at extraordinary highs is how you win. And over time, it's basically the best way to play. So I think that it's really, really important to understand this macro cycle. First, understand that investing is not a get-rich-quick mentality. It looks like that, right? Because there are people that have been accumulating for 2 years, and then all of a sudden their portfolio is worth 10 times more. They're like, oh, wow, they made $1 million in like 2 months. It's like, no, that took 2 years of accumulation for them to get to this point. So people feel that way about success all the time. They're like, oh yeah, you're an overnight success. It was easy for you. You got lucky. It's like, no, it's actually a lot of hard work prior to this moment that does that. So don't forget it. Ethereum also looking quite weak here, breaking down below its line. These look like definite redistribution. Bitcoin is the only one where it looks like you could be seeing a reaccumulation. And what's worrying here is that now that we're seeing the potential for redistribution on the side of the channel here, we could be coming a lot lower in many of the other assets. We're currently at $1,700 for Ethereum. Is that correct? Yeah, $1,700 for Ethereum right now. And that's where we're at. Just red across the board, basically. So again, don't worry too much about these moments. They can be disastrous, I guess, to some degree if you're new, but you got to keep that long-term outlook. So one of the other important things is never use leverage. Like, where is it? I think it's this one. Are we on the full screen now? Yes, we are. Okay, cool. Leverage is such an easy way for you to lose money in the middle of the bull market. And you're like, oh, well, great. I have this ability to leverage up and take the potential. But yeah, you also have this really easy ability to lose a bunch of money because you have no guarantee of knowing where you are in the markets. And that's an important part. So for anyone that's new in the ecosystem, just stay away from leverage always. It's just easier to buy spot and continue to buy spot. If you get really good at it, you can see these early stage accumulation cycles taking place. Like back here when Bitcoin was around, when Ethereum was around $280, $300. This is where we started to take our leverage long positions. You can go back to our videos in September and you can watch that. You can watch us open long positions in Ethereum here. And there's a reason why, is because there was so much room for upside and so significant less risk. Whereas here today, there's so much risk on the table. You know, I to some degree, you know, I think a lot of us thought we'd see, what the is going on here? What's this? I don't even know what's going on now. Okay, there we go. So again, you want to really recognize the macro cycle. Look, again, always understand how high up we are. This looks almost identical to a hypodermic top. I hate to say it, but this looks like, at least for now, we're going to see the bull market come to some type of finality. This hypodermic top in Ethereum looks glaringly strong now. So the important part here, guys, is to recognize the long-term macro perspective of accumulation. Remember never to risk too much. And for those of you that got in late and are buying up here, trying to sell and buy back lower is not a great strategy. Can you do it? Yeah, sure. This is not financial advice, but usually the best thing to do is if you realized why something was valuable when the price is high, you should continue to try to accumulate it when the price is low. The downside is a lot of people go, oh yeah, I buy the dip, and then, oh my God, it's dipping further, I have no money left. It's like, well, you should be going to work and continuing to generate revenue, whether it's through businesses you produce or maybe websites, who knows. The point of this is building a portfolio is a long-term strategy. And the way you continue to accumulate is by going to build businesses, generate wealth. One of the things that really sucks about people like Max Kaiser is that they fucking fail at expressing that the way they made money to buy Bitcoin in the first place was not by buying Bitcoin. They're basically jackasses for that point. Like Michael Saylor at least is taking a little bit better of a perspective now, where he's like, oh yeah, hey look, I made $32 million off buying voice.com because I recognize that technology is massively scalable. And if I buy something at $8 for voice.com back in 1999 and I sell it for $32 million in 2020, that's a huge win because I'm investing in technology, right? You have to keep these long-term perspectives, and people don't usually make money by by building a portfolio. They make money by generating valuable business models, and then they do things like acquire interesting assets like a voice.com, right? You could make an argument that a lot of these things are like voice.coms. They are early stage, like digital real estate to some degree. So you're going to want to keep that in mind, that the game here is all about long-term playing. So again, everything here looks looks not good. We're probably going to see, I mean, even with like I can't believe Avalanche is down at $9. Like we could come down to $4 Avalanche here now. Again, just all of this looks like distribution. At least at this moment. And again, we went over this in our previous videos, that if we didn't get back above, especially for Solana here, that we are going to come down significantly. And we see that in all of the positions. FTT couldn't get back above the trading range. What does it do? It turns around. Woo couldn't get back above your resistance line, turns around. Same with 1 inch, couldn't get back above, turns around. Serum couldn't get back above, turns around. So across the board, we see the same story. Now, into the traditional markets, we actually see the NASDAQ moving up again, which is interesting. Although again, there's every reason to believe that this is an upthrust and that we will get distribution. The S&P 500 mini futures had a really quick recovery, but has not regained all of its strength. So it's very likely that we turn around here too. We could be expecting a bigger market cycle in almost everything. This is starting to look like a rounded top in the S&P 500. So let's go to some on-chain metrics and take a look. So we'll start with this one, the Fear and Greed Index. The Fear and Greed Index, yeah, here we go. We are at 10. We are in extreme fear. Do we have any data? Does this have long-term data? Nice, yeah, it does. 1 year is the max, okay. So, it doesn't show even further back. Well, it would be nice to see March, but we are basically in extreme fear territory. And one of the important parts here is that you can basically remove the price and go, okay, well, if I'm buying in fear and selling in greed, you're kind of playing the game correctly. Again, the downside is a lot of people buy in the greed when Bitcoin's up at, like, let's say here the greed was at in April was actually declining, which is an interesting sentiment to look at. We'll have to remember, oh, there we go. There's the max button. Awesome. So here, right where I'm looking at right now is the peak of the pandemic in March 2020. And we are at the same levels of fear that we were then. So that's really important to notice. Also back here, December, this is when Bitcoin hit $3,000. So where we are in the fear range is actually beautiful. This is technically an area of accumulation, even if we do drop lower. It's this fear that we're really interested in. So now that we can see the max history of the fear and greed, you could almost ignore the prices to some degree and focus on buying anything below 40 on the greed index or anything below 40 on the fear side, and selling anything above 60 or 70 on the greed side. And you could basically ignore the charts to some degree. If we look at Bitcoin here on this long-term time frame, here you can see the pandemic, March 20th, and Bitcoin in January 2019 at $3,000. So here's January, again, below 30% mark, or the 30 mark for the fear, and then above 80, above 60 on June 19th when we hit $13,000. So you could follow almost just the greed and fear index to some degree and not ever look at a price either. And again, this is really important to understand because you're dealing with human psychology. Right now, people are going to be really scared. They're going to be asking questions like, oh, I bought it 55 grand. Should I sell it 30 because it's going to go down to 19? And if I rebuy back at 19, I'll have more than I had and I'll save some. And what you need to remember is that this is a long-term game, and that the best way to play it when you're new is just find consistent entries of whatever you can afford every month. And the mistake people make is they're usually like, I'm going all in at Bitcoin because it's going to go to 100 grand. Your risk to reward relationship up here is way too high. So again, this head and shoulders here doesn't look good for Bitcoin. This hypodermic top for Ethereum doesn't look good for the markets as well. What we just saw in Solana and Avalanche doesn't look, again, it leads to the side that we are going to enter at least an intermediary bear market. I don't think it's going to be the full long-term kind of 1800-day or 1200-day bear market that we had before. I actually have bets that this is an SOS and an LPS, which is fucking fascinatingly powerful. This is the stepping stone to hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoin in my opinion, and we'll go over that part now. So a little bit of news on the China banning mining. We can see the hash rate has dropped back down to where we were in around November 2020. So we saw big growth in mining. We've hit a peak. We'll have to watch more of the hash rate breakouts as well, alongside the fear and greed. We'll start to add these to our consistent watch list. But look, here you can see basically lows and highs kind of somewhat aligning again with the market cycles. So we've seen a massive drop in Bitcoin, and this is the 7-day average. Oh, here's the raw values. Okay, there we go. So we're actually back down to November lows for hash rate since the kind of mining ban that's taken place. What's this next one? And there was one more I wanted to go over. Where was it? Oh yeah, Glassnode. So here's some Glassnode data. Really interesting to see that the amount of supply on the open market has not actually increased all that much, yet we're still seeing a dramatic price drop. One of the other parts I wanted to go over was the stock to flow. We'll load that one up now. So the stock to flow is the stock to flow model is a really interesting cycle to look at. Again, we're not using it as a perfection area. We just want to notice the similarities. So back here in January 2018, we did stay below the stock to flow model for quite some time before breaking out. And here, what I believe is actually we're just seeing this intermediary cycle before we have the finality of the bull market, and that we'll likely spend some time accumulating here. One of the reasons that is, well, actually a few, but let's go to stock to flow deflection. This is it. So the stock to flow deflection is one of the other ones we like to use. This shows us the average cost of Bitcoin in terms to mine it versus to buy it. So right now it is actually cheaper to buy Bitcoin than it is to mine it. So when it's in the red here, it's cheaper or it's more expensive to buy it than it is to mine it. Here it is cheaper to buy it than it is to mine it. So technically it's at a discount. And anytime you see Bitcoin at a discount for mining, especially with the mining values changing, it's kind of a good area to accumulate. Again, you can see the fluctuations here. When we were in the green, this was a good time back at $3,000. When we were in the green, back here at $6,000. And when we're in the green here again. Now, what's interesting is there are very few times in this new stock to flow deflection model where Bitcoin has peaked out above that. And what we can see is that back here in 2016, when the market cycle started up, it had this big moment down where it was actually cheaper throughout half of the Bitcoin cycle before it blew up into its cycle top. So I do suspect that we're seeing something kind of similar, that we're going to witness probably 2 to 3 months down in this area. And again, we could come to 20 grand. I'm not trying to pick the bottom of this here. I still think long-term accumulation is the best strategy. But more importantly is that if this was an SOS and this was an LPS, which is quite common for these big, huge reaccumulation or accumulation patterns, we could see that's where the bull market likely starts afterwards. So this is kind of what I suspect we'll see. Now, again, we could be proven wrong, but more importantly, it's your entries that make a difference more than your exits. And if you made proper entries, you're not really concerned about the price today because you're still up like 400%. And again, you understand the value then at that point too. So if you're new to the markets, one of the best advice I can give you is just always keep showing up. There's nothing wrong with that. So again, one of the big conversations is this accumulation or a spring or a redistribution. Judging by the rest of the market, we would say it's more redistribution. But again, I actually suspect that this is the SOS or the sign of strength. And and what we're witnessing is the first backup phase. And the backup phases we have seen in the past will often come down to the top of the trading range. So we'll have the breakout around 18,000. Here's our SOS up to 60. We come back down, let's say maybe even to 23, 24. Let's say we come down to 19 just for fun, all the way to the top of the trading range, and then we go up even higher. We've seen this many, many times before in the accumulation cycles themselves, that you have SOS, LPS. Although we are hitting the top of the regression line again, so we're in a really key area. So there's two things we want to keep an eye on. If we cannot get back above $35,000, we will come lower. That's just the end of that story. Now, if we go back above 35,000, we hold and we close above 38,000, boom. That was the spring. We'll continue higher and we'll do something sexy like this. So we've got two options right now, at least for the intermediary. But again, I think it's less important to focus on those and more important to focus on the strategy, which will make everybody successful, which is that long-term accumulation is how you win, and then you just keep accumulating. So hopefully that's helpful, everyone. I did want to go over one last thing here, the reserve risk ratio too. So the reserve risk ratio is another way we like to look at the current price of Bitcoin versus how much risk there is to buy it. So anytime that you were in the green here, that was a good spot to accumulate Bitcoin. Nice. So as you can tell, one of the things people make mistakes of back in 2018, buying Bitcoin at 5 grand and then thinking that they should have sold at 10 grand and then not buying more just along the way, kind of screws up their strategy. But technically, everywhere in 2018 almost was a great point of entry. And what we're witnessing right now is actually almost a great point of entry again. If we come down to the $20,000 Bitcoin, it's basically like a no risk entry point. So it's very likely that we'll, again, we could come down this low. And if we compare it again to the previous market cycles, we've seen these secondary ups come back down before going much higher. So you never get a repeating pattern. It's almost always a bad idea to think that things are going to hit identical to the way that they've happened in the past. Not to happen in the past. I don't think buying and selling and building a portfolio is good for most people. I just have to keep reiterating this because I know it's very hard. It becomes very emotional if it's your first time, if you just entered. It's all about long-term accumulation. That's how all the big players play. And you're like, well, Tio, they've got so much more money. It's like, well, that's actually how they ended up with a lot more money than you, most likely. So try to remember that you want to play like the big boys, even though you may not be there yet. That's just because that's how they've managed to win to get there in the first place. So you can't see that kind of backlog of success that brought them there. So we're pretty much almost at an area of no risk for entry again as well. And people are like, oh, well, should I be selling? It's like, why would you be selling when you're almost at a no risk point of entry? That's the opposite. You want to be selling when we're in strength, not moving down and lower into it. So it's always important to keep that in mind. Although the emotional things will definitely kind of push you off that scale. So I want to, we'll go over some of your guys' thoughts and questions. If you're new to the channel, please think about subscribing. If you would like to join or if you're adventurous and like to try new things, join our mastermind group. There's no risk because if you're not happy, we'll just give you a refund. So why not try it out? One of the most important parts there is that showing up through 2018, 2019, and 2020 was boring for most people because nothing super exciting is happening. And we provide a group that's always researching, studying, and making entries so that when most people don't care what you're talking about, you can just keep buying Bitcoin here at a significantly reduced price. So anyways, think about joining the private group as well. We'll take the last little bit of this to go over some of your guys' thoughts and questions. Rex Banner says, showing up and accumulating works. I've been hanging out with the bear since 2018. That's what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you win this game right there. Congratulations, Rex. I'm sure you're doing well and probably not worried at all. Just thinking long-term game plan here. Willis says, thanks for sharing your thoughts and analysis. Always happy. Hey guys, I'm actually going to be on the BitBoy show again today. So thanks to BitBoy for inviting me on and sharing his platform. It's really, I mean, almost 4,000 new bear families since that last show. It'll be kind of fun to see if we have consistent growth. Maybe because of BitBoy, we can break over 50,000 in the next few months. That would be amazing. So shout out to him for growth. I mean, look, I don't like that they shill leverage. Maybe one day I'll be like, hey, dude, just it's not a good thing to do. But anyways, I'm not knocking BitBoy. He's obviously, or any number of the creators. I guess I was always knocking just people shilling leverage, because I think leverage is a horrible thing to be doing when you're a new trader or a new investor, when you could literally just be buying spot and doing great. So, yeah. Is Bali off the plate? Good question. We're working on building a new corporate infrastructure and our treasury, and that's going to take some time, and it's more important than going to Bali. I'm still young. I'm only 34, so I should focus on kind of finishing some of these things up before I jump on. So yeah. Yeah. DJ says, hey, Arcane, how can a thing so volatile be a future currency? We're not looking at it as a currency. We're looking at it as a collateral layer, and that's a great question. Technically, we expect that over time it becomes less volatile, but time is one of the most difficult aspects of everything in the future. What's your thoughts on Shiba? I don't and will never touch Shiba. It's trash. Whatever it is, it's trash. Kraken stopped leverage. Yeah, some of these will have to be, they'll be forced to stop leverage. JW says, hey, what time are you on BitBoy today? I believe it's at 2:45 or 3 p.m. my time. I'll have to double check. It's in my calendar. I think it's around, I have 2 to 4 p.m. blocked off because I want to gather as much data for the show again as possible. So I'll usually do about an hour's worth of study beforehand. I actually sometimes do more. I've done more research for his just to make sure I'm ready than I do for mine, because I know you guys are already used to me freestyling for like an hour. For anyone new, Mike says, for anyone new, if you aren't consistently watching Arcane Bear yet or part of their mastermind, you're seriously missing out on so much knowledge and value. Grow yourself and grow your wealth. Hey, that's a nice one. Grow yourself and grow your wealth. Nice quote there, Mike. I like that one. We're going to have to reuse that. Grow yourself and grow your wealth with Arcane Bear. I agree with you. The mastermind group is extraordinarily important. It's just like having a personal trainer and going to the gym with a group of friends. You end up doing better because of the level of accountability between multiple people. It's hugely important. Glasswalker says, let's do some chat room calls. Yeah, hey, everyone, by the way, if you're in the private group, I know it's been a kind of a busy last 2 months. I've been focused mostly on corporate paperwork and building out the venture capital research arm of Arcane Bear. If you go to actually, this will be a great time to shill that. If you go to arcanebear.com, one of the things we've been doing the last basically 2 months is building out our research arm. So it's taken up a lot of our time, and it's a lot of focus on a bunch of ideas. So if you scroll down on the website, this is where you can sign up, but you can now go through and you can click on any one of these tokens that we are interested in, and you can research them. So let's go with KeeperDAO. So KeeperDAO, an interesting DeFi project, and this is our series called What the F Is, and you can go through. So we started to really build out our research arm on all of these, and we'll continue to do that. And under Wu Wei as well, our research into companies that have not launched yet. So for instance, here's a fun one. I'll give you guys all a free little bit of a bear tidbit. SolRise launches on FTX on June 29th. I'm hugely excited about venture capital, and that's been one of the most exciting parts about how we build our portfolio. Understand that understanding the idea of heads I win, tails I only lose a little, getting into early venture capital projects and just basically sitting for years has yielded huge results. I really think that's one of the most important ways to go. So check out our new Wu Wei research arm. Again, for fun things like Insure, Parastate hasn't even launched yet. Composable hasn't even launched yet. A lot of our research is into companies and tokens that don't even exist yet, right? So for instance, Pods Finance, the podcast we did with the awesome Rafaela the other day, is building options on the blockchain, and they're not launched yet. We try to bring you the projects before anybody ever knows they even exist. So that's my favorite thing. That's what we've been working on in the background. So to your point, for the private members, we will next week on Tuesday or Thursday start doing our group Zoom calls again. So thank you guys for that. We'll go back to my face for a minute here. Let's take a look at a few of my guys' thoughts. Alan Ernest says, dude, you're the future of this market. I swear you're so far ahead of everyone. Well, thank you, Alan. You know, one of my favorite things to do is study and research. And I love that. So thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. I just like studying and researching. I spend probably too much time doing it. Not enough time at the gym doing leg day. I should be doing more leg squats instead of researching. I got to mix those two together a little better. We'll go with the last few thoughts and questions, guys. So remember to give us those thumbs up. It means the world to me. Share this video with your friends and family. Tell them about the Arcane Bear. We really appreciate that. Joshua Hepner says, I found you on Around the Blockchain. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for bringing a level head to the space. My pleasure. I'm really just trying to share with you guys what's worked for me, because it's really easy to make mistakes, and those mistakes can end up costing a lot. So I'm just trying to share with you the mistakes I've made and what you can do to overcome those, which is just a consistent long-term investment strategy. Now, if you spend years and years practicing, you can get a lot better. You can trade, you get better at selling highs, shaving off profits, reducing risk, but for the most part, it's really effective to stay focused on making good entries, which is mostly about consistency. What do you think about the Bitcoin standard? I don't like Saifedean and Amos, and I disagree with these people who think that everything that's not Bitcoin is considered like a shit coin. It's absolutely it's like high levels of stupidity. So although I do agree that Bitcoin is likely to become our collateral layer, I don't agree with the maximalists on how that will work. I think that they're way, way off. Okay, last few questions. How long could this accumulation phase last? Well, look, technically we've been in accumulation forever. Again, one of the most interesting parts here is, let's go to the larger time frame and go back, okay? So remember, I bought my first Bitcoin at 90 bucks. Not on purpose either, by the way. I just did that because it was saving us money. So I'm not like a genius or anything. I bought it at $1,000. I made the mistake that a lot of you guys did probably this time, which is afterwards, I bought at the all-time high of $1,000. And then I had to watch it come down. I started reaccumulating after around the $400 mark. As soon as I saw it jump up here to around $500, I started accumulating again. And this is why understanding the Wyckoff trading ranges is so powerful. Now, technically, you could have been buying all of this, right? You can go through Twitter and you can find all these comments where people are like, oh my God, Bitcoin crashed from $1,000 to $400. We actually do have merch, but it is only available to the private members. I'm sorry about that. We just try to keep everything for the private members. I know we're like, oh, well, Tio, we all love your stuff. And it's just easier for us to manage a small group. So technically, we do have an Arcane Bear shop. We've got some dope clothing and stuff, but we've just hidden all of it unless you're a member. The reason being is because it's a lot of work to deal with this stuff. So we do actually have merch for sale, but only if you're a member. I know maybe we'll fix that in the future. But for now, I've built everything, so that's the way it goes. I guess I guess in the future we'll try to scale that out. But especially now that we have people like we have so many wonderful people like Daniel helping us build. So awesome. Anyways, deal with the Arcane Bear. Thank you guys all for joining us so much. We'll see you again in the next episode. Remember to follow us on all the social media channels down below. We will be on BitBoy's show today. Super stoked about that one. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you to all the new Bear family as well. I couldn't be more grateful for all of your guys' support. It means the world to me. I really like doing this. If you can't tell, I actually just love doing this. Like, Now that's anyways. The two stories there. Hopefully we'll start to make some more vlogs again because I also love doing that too. Anyways, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Stay with the Arcane Bear.